Hey guys, welcome back to another Friday Reads. Today's video is going to be my November wrap-up and my October wrap-up. I didn't do one last month because I believe I only read 2 or 3 books. I have to go back on my Goodreads, which I'm actually going to do right now. October was a really rough month for me. Obviously, I got married in October, which was so lovely, but we also had a death in the family the day of our wedding, and it was really hard, and it put me in, I am not going to cry, I'm going to call it a bit of a slump, and I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, like a slump of everything, not just reading. So all that's to say is I skipped my October wrap up, and I'm going to be doing that today as well. Sorry, I'm looking down. And a lot of these books I do not have with me because they were library books, but I will show you on my phone. The first book I finished in October was A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. It's the second book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. And I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Overall, I loved it even more than the first book, which I also gave 5 stars. But I did have one small issue with it that I feel like is extremely controversial, so bear with me. I love books that are diverse, and in this book we find out one of the characters. I'm not going to spoil because this is why I have an issue with it. We find out one of the characters is bi, I believe. It's a male character who is interested in another male character, but in the first book he was interested in other females from what I gathered. So I'm going to declare him as bi for the purpose of what I'm trying to say. I have no problem with, obviously, LGBTQA+, I'm sorry, I don't know the whole anagram, content in books, obviously. I have absolutely no issues with that. However, to me, a straight, white, cis female, it felt forced in the sense of, like, a critique of the first book was that there was not enough LGBTQ plus representation in the first book. Like, to me, reading it, it felt like it was just thrown in there just for the purpose of making the book really diverse. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I don't want anybody to take offense to that. Maybe we can have a discussion, a grown adult, nice discussion down in the comments below. Maybe you feel the same way, or maybe you don't, and I'd love to hear your opinions, but to me it felt almost like an afterthought, if that makes sense. But it was still a 5-star read. I loved seeing more of the magic system, and the competition was exciting, and I absolutely loved Alucard, who is a new character we meet in the second book. I really love his character. I had said that I do wish there's a little bit more plot for being over 500 pages. In that sense, it was a little slow. There was quite a bit of character development, and I did enjoy that as well. And it did leave on a cliffhanger, so I'm really excited to jump into A Conjuring of Light, hopefully in December. Wow, I rambled on about that way too much. I feel like I was trying to tread lightly while still getting my point across. Anyways, after that, I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and I'm doing a reread of Harry Potter for maybe the second time, but it's been a really long time since I've read the Harry Potter series, and it is a childhood favorite. And after everything that happened in October, I wanted like that nostalgic, cozy feeling from a book. I couldn't concentrate really on anything else. But knowing the story and how I know that it makes me feel a little happier, I picked up The Chamber of Secrets. And of course this is 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like I don't really need to go into the plot of this, but I did read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This is a Canadian first edition, which I love that I own this. So those are the 2 books I read in October. In November, the first book that I read, and it was another 5-star read for me, is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Wow. I love this series. I haven't even read Muse of Nightmares yet, and I just know I'm going to love this series. This book is so magical, so lyrical, so whimsical. I loved every second of it. I do understand the critique of it being really slow. There are definitely slow parts, but I loved the writing so much. I wouldn't have wanted it any shorter, if that makes sense. Like, I honestly loved every second of it. Even the slow parts, I loved hearing more about the characters, about the world. It's a new favorite. If you didn't know what Strange the Dreamer is about, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it justice, because the premise, the synopsis, just doesn't really make sense until you actually read the book. So you're following Laszlo Strange, who was an orphan, who was adopted by monks, which is why his last name is Strange, because he doesn't have his own last name. He then leaves the monks to work in a library, so he is a librarian, and he is studying the city of Weep, which he was obsessed with as a child. And Weep is not actually the name of this city, but one day, through magic, the name of the city just poof out of everyone's mind, and that word, the name of the city, was replaced with the word Weep. And he's obsessed with this long lost city. He would love to go there someday, but it's a very long journey away, and nobody has been there in hundreds of years. Well, a caravan arrives from the city of Weep, and they are going to all of the nearby towns and gathering up experts in various fields and taking them back to the city to solve a problem. And of course, Laszlo Strange gets to go because he is an expert on the city of Weep, though he's never been there. So out of all of the people that they're gathering up, he knows the most about the city. Next, I read Gemenon by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Illuminae Files series. I read this in combination of physically as well as audiobook, which is definitely the way I recommend reading these books. The audiobooks have a full cast of characters. They have sound effects such as gunfire. They have music in the background. They are so cinematic. It's just like listening to a movie. And then the books themselves are told in mixed media. Think of it like a big case file. There are like paper clips with sticky notes stuck to them. There are transcripts, emails, all of these different things, blueprints. So visually, it's super stimulating to read as well. So I really recommend reading it both physically and as an audiobook at the same time if you are able. I really love this series. I did rate this book 4 stars, 3.5, 4 stars. I rated the first book, Illuminae, 5 stars. I definitely enjoyed it much more. Without spoiling anything for this whole series, I really did not like the plot twist in the later half of this book, if you can even call it that. This is a young adult sci-fi series. You're following a crew of people in a spaceship. And I'm going to leave it there. I did do a full review of Illuminae, the first book, over on my blog, which is always linked down below. I typed that up recently, so if you're more interested in the first book, definitely go read that review. Next, I read The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if it's because I don't generally read thrillers, but I couldn't put this down. I found this so entertaining, so suspenseful. There are a lot of plot twists throughout this. There's even an early one which throws your whole thoughts of the entire book off balance. You're like, whoa, what just happened? We're not even halfway through the book, and now I have no idea what's going to happen next. And like I said, it could be because I don't read that many thrillers, but I really loved this. And also there's like a plot twist / cliffhanger at the end, but I think this is a standalone. And I kind of hate that. Like, it doesn't wrap anything up, and you're kind of like, well, what happens next? I don't know, but still, 5 out of 5 stars for The Kind Worth Killing. Next, I read The Diviners by Liva Bray. I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is a very character-driven book, aka slow-paced, but it has a super interesting underlying plot, which is what kept me reading, and I really did enjoy the characters as well. You know the underlying plot, but so you want to keep reading to find out okay, where is this going? What's going to happen next? But it's still just very character driven, and I kind of found that to be very frustrating. It is a very large book. It is 578 pages. Did I even show you the cover of this book? That is a very chunky book, and it is a series. I am going to continue on the series. I'm probably going to wait until next October. It's a very spooky, atmospheric type of book. Definitely paranormal, YA, thriller-ish, but I would put it mostly in the paranormal category. Next, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Finally, I need to go get Wyatt. Hold, please. Sorry, got Wyatt out of his bed. As I was saying, next I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is my very first Sarah J. Maas book. I also want to read the Throne of Glass series, but I know that one is bigger, a little heavier, so I wanted to dip my toe in. Basically, I wanted some YA trashy fantasy, and that's exactly what I got. I gave this 5 stars. I know it's problematic. I get it. There are a lot of things that I don't agree with, but I enjoyed every second of it. I devoured this book so quickly. It was trashy, it was steamy, it was exactly what I wanted. Wow. It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, so you know kind of the overall plot, I guess. You kind of have an idea of what is going to happen, but I just love it. I can't wait to read A Court of Mist and Fury. And the last book that I read in November was Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars as well. My November reading month was excellent. I do have an issue with the footnotes. I don't really think they're necessary. Sometimes they are smartass inner thought type of remarks, and other times it's additional information on the city. I feel the footnotes would have been better put into the Codex Handbook or something similar to Shadowhunter series, an additional little encyclopedia on the world or something like that, rather than in the story, because they had no bearing on the actual plot. It was interesting to find out more about the world, and maybe that comes into play more in the next book, knowing more about things like that. I'm not really sure, but I found it very distracting. And someone was like, well, just don't read the footnotes. But knowing they're there and coming up to an asterisk and knowing the footnote is there and like trying to consciously skip over it in and of itself is also distracting, but it just took me out of the story every single time. But the overall story, I loved this book, so I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. You're following Mia Corvair, who essentially goes to assassin school. It was very exciting. So those were all of the books that I read in the month of November and October, the 2 books I read in October. I had a very good reading month this month, and I'm really happy about that, especially following October. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book that you read this month was. I'd love to know. Please do give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!